Good morning, Tarek.
Good morning, Sid.
Looking through your work from Adidas to Trace, you've always been ahead of the curve. Do you still get the same rush when a fan posts their first collectible moment with Trace?
Yeah, definitely. When you create something that a consumer or a fan digs, even one or 10 or 100 of them, there's something special about that moment. It's like writing a song and finding somebody who likes to listen to it. There's a romance in it, I think, which can fill your spirit with just infinite energy, honestly.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're diving into. How tech, purpose, and community are shaping the future of sports fandom. Let's get into it. The following is a conversation with Tareq Nazlawy, global sports innovator and CEO of Trace. This is Pre-Zero Sports Talk podcast, and I'm your host, Sid Bensalah. Today, we explore how sports, innovation, and leadership come together to create deeper, fun experiences, uncovering real stories and insights that matter. To support our show, please check the episode description. Tarek, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me, Sid. It's a pleasure.
You're welcome. You've led innovation at Adidas, built a digital bridge between fandom and identity, and now you're pioneering a new way to engage fans through Trace. I want to start by going back. What pulled you into this next chapter?
Well, I think to understand that, you probably got to join a few dots, right? So I was at Adidas a long time, right? I started my career actually at Boston Consulting Group as a strategy consultant, and Adidas was a client, and I was working in the supply chain side of things. How to make more products that people want and less products that people don't want, with better planning, better technology, better information, innovation in the manufacturing context, shall we say? And that journey took me into really looking at how product was created in the first place. The actual creation of a product, how it's designed, and using digital techniques for that. And from there, I started to lead the customization business, where consumers are telling the brand what it wants. And from there, I went into digital innovation, which is how can we use technology to I think, turn the brand really into a platform which is at the service of its consumer. And from there, I learned about Web3 technology at that point, right? The distributed ledger of blockchain, and how that actually can be a layer which orchestrates relationships between entities and consumers and fans. That moment for me was a penny drop moment, and that's when I got hired. After a decade at Adidas, by a studio which was focused on how to use emerging technology to enhance these relationships between brands and communities, right? In culture explicitly. And it was from there that we actually ended up seeing the same brief over and over again, which is, especially on the sports side, which is, the big thing for us is knowing who our fans are. How can this technology help us to do that in a different way? It's an old problem with looking for new solutions. And so when we came up with this concept for Trace as a sort of proof of concept in the studio, we tried it out, we got good results, and decided to spin up the company out of the studio. So, those are the sort of the quick chronology of how to do it. But it comes from a place of unlocking value in networks and basically eliminating waste, because there's a lack of information flow between different participants in a network. That's the kind of macro theme for me. Doing it in sport and culture is just probably the most fun place to do it.
Fantastic. What's one leadership lesson that stuck with you from the corporate world?
I think mostly, it's a great question, because mostly I've been ditching them as opposed to deciding which ones to keep. But I think the big one, like I still do mentorship with people who work in companies of different sizes. And one of the big things when it comes to especially innovation is about when to ask forgiveness and when to ask permission, right? which by the way, it seems like a simple thing, right? Like I learned that at Adidas in the context that sometimes it's better to sort of come home with having taken a bet and got a result, or even whether it's positive or negative, rather than respect too much some of the boundaries and that corporate matrix will put on you. If you over respect it, you end up underestimating yourself too much of the time. And so seeking organizational permission sometimes is something which is endemic, and people respect it when you also decide when to selectively break that. I always caveat it with that's something which requires to be thought about in cultural context. What that means in Germany relative to the US, relative to the UK, relative to France, relative to Japan. Very, very different tolerance levels for that kind of forgiveness and permission triage, shall we say.
And in today's corporate pace, how do you define leadership?
I think in today's world, honestly, that yes, it's the pace. It's also I think leadership is a lot more complex than it used to be. The things that people expect leaders to be thinking about and taking care of, especially when it comes to things like the topics of identity, well-being, work-life balance, remote and on-site. It's a very, very complex job, actually. It's a difficult one to get right. And quite frankly, I don't think it gets more attractive with time. I think it gets less attractive with time. And it gets harder to define. And so the easiest way that I think about things and that I expect of the leaders in my team is you can understand what kind of leader somebody is by the type of followership they create, right? You're not a leader unless someone's following.
Right.
And when you look at the quality of the followership, not just the level of the talent, but also the motivation of that talent, the creativity of that talent, how they collaborate together, that's really the easiest measure for me. Look at the effect, that the shadow that leader casts, and you'll soon learn what kind of leader they are, what kind of leader you are, right?
Yeah. Was there a moment when you knew Trace needed to exist?
Yeah, there was actually. So that moment actually was. It wasn't a eureka moment. Okay, I'd love to make it seem like it was like the smartest thing ever, but like here's a very honest way of how this came about, right? We at Science Magic Studios, the studios that I was talking to you about, that studio was started with big ambitions. I was hired as the president of that studio as well to operate it. Company had raised a good amount of money from very good investors in the height of the blockchain and Web3 boom in 2021. And when we came up with this proof of concept for Trace late in 2023, we really came up with it as a way to demonstrate what we could do as a product studio, right? And sell that product repeatedly to different customers. Fact of the matter is that that studio was created to sort of launch cryptocurrency tokens in the cultural economies and much bigger ideas than what we thought what this little proof of concept was there to do. And so actually we decided to close that studio.
Okay.
And at that point I was thinking, well, what do I do now? Right? Like what do I do
next?
with my life? Right? I've left Adidas, I've joined this studio, I've taken my punt on startup life. It doesn't feel like this one has been I think right ideas for sure, but maybe the timing was just not right with the market, and lots of things we could have learned from that. But then something interesting happened, which was I got 3 phone calls within 2 weeks asking explicitly about, hey, what are you doing with that Trace thing that you did? We did this proof of concept for Formula One fans, so people had a chance to see that. And there were 3 different sporting bodies that were
Tarek, sorry to cut you. Just for our listeners, when you say proof of concept, you were talking about some kind of MVP?
Yeah, even probably less than an MVP,
Okay.
right? So and the V in MVP is for viable, right? I would say that the proof of concept, which is really it's even before that, it's you launch something out there to see basically how people react to it, and you get some kind of data point which says there's something here. There is a concept which has some evidence behind it.
Okay.
For that to become a viable product, there are still a few steps to take, right?
Yeah.
In terms of how you produce that economically and how you monetize that and all the rest of that. So even earlier than an MVP, I would say, but not far from one. But then these 3 phone calls from, football, motorsport, and tennis, the feedback there was, look, we've seen, we've seen everything pitched to us, and we haven't seen anything quite as simple and elegant as that. What are you doing with it? And at that point, I was like, well, it's funny you should ask, because I'm literally figuring out, like, do I take this and spin this up? And I decided at that moment to be like, okay, if I can get one of these people to be a customer, and if I can get one investor on board, and I can get one of my guys from the studio to come co-found this with me, his name's Warren, then we'll do this. Then I'll move from Amsterdam back to the UK, big family story behind that one, and set this up. And that's how it actually happened. There was enough luck surface area that we had enough contact with the market to do a proof of concept which showed enough promise to get enough interest to inspire us that, like, there's something really in here. And in the end, you don't make a decision with this when it comes to this kind of thing. You make a decision with this. Yeah. And we are sports fans. And if you are a sports fan and there's something which is resonating with you deeply, then it taps into another level of conviction beyond the rational as well. And, I think if you're going to go to the lengths of starting a company, you need that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tarek, for someone hearing about Trace for the first time, how do you explain it?
I explain it as basically like virtual ticket stubs for people who can never make it to sporting matches, right? That's the easiest way for me to explain it. Where that really comes from is that, like, sport today is consumed by people all over the world, right? If you're a football fan, count how many football matches you go to compared to how much football you consume. If you're a motorsport fan, it's even harder to get to, like, a F1 race or a MotoGP race, or tennis or cricket, these sports that kind of rove the globe. But obsession is not something which is measured in how many times you go to live matches now, right? Especially with Gen Z. Gen Z, half of them don't even go to live sport. Never been to a live sporting match. Yet they consume 4 times as much sporting content around matches or live events than the generations before them. These people are unrecognized and unknown, and the idea that, like, I'm turning up week in, week out, and I've got nothing to show for that, that's what it is that we're trying to solve for. We think every fan should have their own fan passport that captures all the sporting events that they've provably been paying attention to, and that should unlock the best of the sport, right? So the traces themselves are the things that you get, or that you collect around these live events as evidence of that commitment.
And why is it more than just digital collectibles or NFTs?
Well, I guess you talk about the substance and what can you create with the substance, right? Why is it more than digital collectibles? Is because sport fandom is about identity, right? And if I think about the things that we obsess about, in fact, the legal name of our company is not Trace. Trace is the product. It's Obsessionism Limited. It's the study of obsession, in fact. And our obsessions are part of our identity. And we take the word obsession with a very positive slant. It's things that connect us with others in the universe, right? Of course, every obsession can become unhealthy. But to celebrate the things that we deeply care about is a positive thing. It's part of self-care. It's part of who you are. And the things that you have are part of the composition of the things that you care about. And so being able to have a collectible, a series of collectibles, which symbolize or represent my commitment, my ritual commitment to the things that I obsess about, is a topic of identity, not just NFTs. Like, NFTs just happens to be the most convenient medium to be able to make that happen, because they're provably scarce and you can verify them anywhere on the internet, with or without Trace being involved in that, which means it's your passport, it's your identity signal, not ours. right? So that's why we use the technology. But, collecting is something which is somehow deeply ingrained in human nature. I mean, look behind me, like I've got my guitar collection right behind me there.
Yeah, see that?
My kids are collecting Pokemons. I used to collect Pogs.
Yeah, I
There's people
remember
collecting
Pokemons with my
cards.
kids too. It was crazy.
It's crazy. People collect things in video games. People even collect, Apple devices. There's something about identity, obsession, and collection which is very intrinsically linked, and we're just using the NFT and the blockchain as the medium to connect that with the consumer experience of sport fandom.
Yeah, it's crazy how things shifted so fast. I used to collect stamps and butterflies and stuff, and now we're talking digital collectibles and NFTs. Crazy.
But look at what didn't change. Right? The compulsion is there, but the vehicle which carries that compulsion has evolved, right? So I think it's the medium is different, but the humanity underneath it is ostensibly the same.
Yeah, fully agree with you. And then you have the emotional attachment aspect to it. Yeah. Tarek, what sets Trace apart from other sports tech or Web3 platforms?
I think it's three things. I'm going to make it sound like I'm saying this off the top of my head, but obviously I've thought about this quite a lot, right?
Go ahead, give it a try.
I think the first thing, I think two of the things are things that I've just said, right? But just to call them out, the first is that there's been a lot of opportunism in the space, and probably things like blockchain, NFTs, and digital collectibles. Most people would be kind of making that kind of face around, like, really, is that really a thing? Didn't we try that? And I think a few things have been missing from what's been done before, right? Mostly these have been licensing deals where a sports team will have licensed their intellectual property to somebody to put them on some tokens and figure some things out, and then bring them a minimum guarantee with some royalties, which is the classic rights holder business model, the licensing business model, right? None of us come from a licensing background, which is why we've not come at it from that aspect. We've come at it from the fan aspect, which is obsession. We stand for obsession. We stand for giving people something to show for their commitment, which is, it's a sacrifice, honestly, to invest that much time in obsessing about something, not just for you, but for your family. And so there should be artifacts of your identity which reflect that. And to do that in a way which speaks to the language of fandom is something which takes a lot of care, a lot of attention, a lot of heart. And we bring that to every project that we do. So I think the obsession being the basis of what we do is the first thing. The second thing is actually coupling the digital collectible technology with the digital identity piece, right? That those two pieces together also have not been cracked so far in the industry. Our vision is that you, Sid, as a sports fan, have a passport which you take with you, almost like one of these QR codes in your Apple Wallet things that will recognize what verifiable credentials you have, which represent your commitment to sport, which then can be used to unlock things with the sports you love, with their partners, and with third parties. That identity layer with the actual playable collecting piece is unique. And the third part is that actually this information, we focus a lot on the fan, but this information is there to unlock commercial value as well between sports rights holders and brands, because brands who invest in sponsorship, which is a big industry, $100 billion a year, growing at 9% per annum, right? It doesn't show any signs of slowing down. But what it does show signs of is being much more discerning about where that investment is going, because measurability and connection and emotion are top of the agenda of sponsors who invest in sports sponsorship, right? So we're trying to create a medium as well, which can carry that brand sponsorship, which delivers that emotion and measurability, such that they can reach kind of the holy grail, which is attribution, right? Like, if we put money into the sports sponsorship, can we really understand more about who is engaging with that, right? We don't just want passive eyeballs. We want active engagement, and we want to know who that fan is. So I think those are the three things, right? The focus on obsession, the coupling of collectibles with identity, and then finally the focus on the attribution and the sponsorship model. That's the formula that we're coming to market with.
Yeah, yeah. How did the ATP Tour collaboration come together?
Well, you remember I told you that story about those 3 phone calls that I got? Yeah. Well, one of them was from the ATP,
Okay.
right? And it wasn't a relationship which was cold. Our partner there is a guy called Mark Epps, and I've been talking to him for probably around a year or so prior to receiving that phone call, as you know, while I was leading the previous studio. So there was some pre-existing trust, and of course the proof of concept, which really grabbed the attention of those 3 rights holders. And I just said to him when he made that phone call, I'm like, look, by the end of June, I'm going to get you to say yes to do a program with us. I'm going to show you what it's going to look like and be like, and I'm going to try and make it as easy to say yes to as possible. And I delivered on that promise, and he said yes. And we agreed to do a pilot program around the ATP Finals in November, which is the ATP Tour's flagship tournament, which wraps up the Masters 1000 series. It takes place in Turin. And we agreed that, like, for the first time, tennis fans all over the world would be able to collect digital artifacts, in fact, pieces of artwork, which are made from the match data of the tennis match for all 15 matches in the ATP Finals. And if we get good results from that, then we'll carry on with the Masters 1000 series, and that's exactly how it's played out.
Mm-hmm. What was the response within the tennis community?
So we can start with the numbers, which is that in 8 days, we had 75,000 fans come and participate in that experience, collecting matches, and they collected 777,000 matches. Right, there are 15 matches over the course of the tournament, but those 75,000 people.
And that's, we're talking 1 year, 1 season.
We're talking 8 days.
8 days. Oof. Okay.
Yeah, 8 days. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that represented a fairly significant growth in the ATP's known fan database within one tournament. Right. It was off the charts, quite frankly, even relative to our own expectation. Just the retention, the repeatability. Like, out of 15 matches, to have a fan come back and collect on average 10 out of the 15 is a very high retention rate. We expected it to be more like 3 to 5, because just go look at any statistic on any mobile gaming experience. You know, D1 retention or 24-hour retention is, if you do 30%, you would be doing best in class, right?
Yeah. So you basically exceeded your earlier expectations.
Yes, we did, and we exceeded the benchmark which was set by the proof of concept with Formula One fans before, right? That was not an official partnership with Formula One. We did it because, you know, it happens to be that half my team were F1 fans, right, including myself.
We all are. It's in the blood.
I can tell you it's not part of the interview process. So for us to end up there was quite a surprise.
Yeah.
But with the F1 proof of concept, in 5 weeks, we had around 15,000 fans come with a repeat claim rate. That means the people who came back more than once, of between 35 and 40%. Which actually is also very strong. It was enough for us to be.
Wow.
It was enough for us to basically be like, there's something in here, and we've barely got started. The ATP Finals exceeded that, to the extent that we were sort of thinking, like, we have to sort of figure out how repeatable that is. Like, why so much? Like, we're not promising. We made no promises to fans about what happens if you collect these. It was really just a pilot program to say, have this to show for your commitment. Those results were so strong that we did end up deciding to continue with the Masters 1000 series with the ATP, which we're doing right now. We have a couple more tournaments coming up this year in Shanghai and at the ATP Finals again. The response from the community, I think, it's an early product. So there is a core of that community who are like, this is amazing. Tennis has been waiting for this. We're underserved with digital experiences, and it's a fairly lonely sport to be a fan of, tennis, right? It's not like football where, you know, we put our jerseys on and we go to the pub and, you know, like it doesn't have the same community tissue, shall we say, as some other team sports do. And so that response has been great. And the fan feedback we've been getting as well, like we've already had like thousands of responses to these surveys and things that we put out of how we make the experience better and better and better. And involving the fan and improving the experience is part of the reward for them. And it's very energizing for us too. There is also a lot of people who are still figuring out what does it mean to collect a match and where does this all go, and you know, am I doing this to unlock some stuff, or like, is there a game here? There are also a lot of people who came to the Turin experience from the world of crypto who are maybe thinking about these things as maybe these things will be worth something. So there's a lot of things to parse out in the early stages of the product development. But the core signal is strong, and that's what gives us encouragement.
It's fantastic. I mean, you exceeded your expectations. And what do you learn from this rollout that will shape Trace's future? You spoke about ATP, you spoke about earlier testing within Formula One, motorsports. And I'm thinking about popular sports like football, like maybe one day Olympic and Paralympic Games, summer and winter. I'm not sure the IOC, they have similar platform for the Olympic Games, but yeah.
There's a lot of places we can go. So this is like the, in startup world, your job is effectively to thread a needle, which is impossible to thread, right? Otherwise it would have been done, right? And the needle that we are threading is where can we create the most impact in specific sporting verticals, because there is a fan base there who is the most ready for an experience like this, and where there is a commercial deal which can be done either on the brand side or the rights holder side, which is actually viable, right? Those two things need to match up. Now, on the first of those, like we're hot for those sports where there is a large global fan base, where there is a lot of data coming from the sport, which can be used to tell better stories around what the hell is going on in the sport, right? So think cricket, massive fan base, right?
Yeah.
Over 1 billion fans, you know, largely concentrated in India and the subcontinent. Think about, so tennis for sure, where we've already started, but think golf,
yeah.
Think combat sports, motorsport, right? Sports where it's a global circus, so going to all the events is going to be very, very difficult to make that happen. And there's a story about the actual momentum shifts in, you know, on the court or on the field or on the track, which if you're just looking at them as a, you know, with a naked eye as an untrained fan, you just like, it just looks like somebody hitting a ball backwards and forwards, or it just looks like a bunch of guys standing on a oval patch of grass, or it just looks like a bunch of cars going around a track, right? There's the story of what's happening, the drama of the sport sometimes needs to surface. It needs help to surface. And it's those sports where that kind of rabbit hole of obsession comes with understanding what's going on, and using the medium of these collectibles to capture that story is part of what we do, right? It's part of why we love doing it, is because there's a way to look at the sport, which is different from what you will see on the broadcast. That's where we think that we really want to go. And there are large fan bases there, right? Very large. The second part is, where is there a deal to be done, right? That's viable. And we come back to the whole licensing business model, right? And that's an obstacle for us. Most sports, you know, the IOC, for example, will be mostly thinking about, well, how much will you pay us for the license to create collectibles to engage Olympics fans globally, right? And the answer to that from somebody who doesn't come from that business is like, well, hold on a minute. Like, this is actually a capability which allows you to understand who the fan is, and create a direct connection which can be monetized. So this is, we don't pay you, you pay us, right?
Right.
But like in the sports world, that is a very tricky thing to navigate, right? Which is why having something which appeals commercially to brand sponsors is also
And do you know why
very
it's tricky
important.
to navigate? Why?
Do I know why it's tricky to navigate?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can probably chip in on this one, Sid, right? You've been in this world, right? It's
Well, the sports are run by governing bodies, and the governing bodies, they are stuck in old-fashioned structure organization when it comes to looking at new ways to improve, to optimize, to give a better fun experience. Because at the end of the day, beside of your teams, players, various sports, you have your supporters, you have your fan base, and it's all how I say, if you don't look at things from a wild lens or angle in terms of what can we do to improve fan experience, fan engagement, which will benefit the partners, the sponsors, and the answer to that question is the system is too old. It needs a complete revamp.
Yeah, it does. It does. I'm going to offer something here, though, which is maybe one of those lessons from the corporate leadership thing that you were talking about earlier, Sid, which is transformation is something which is not easy, right? And you have to empathize with the being which is being transformed, right? So as an innovator, you have to sort of understand how an organization is aligned to exploit its core business model while it's figuring out how to explore new ones, right? And you got to know which room you're in, at any point in time. Are you in a room with the 90% of the organization who's looking at how to exploit the current model? Or are you talking to somebody who's looking at, like with the ATP and the 3 phone calls, like these are the guys who are looking at how to explore something, right? And you can't hate on one. If you want to be able to create change, you need to show a victory one way or another, right? So if the IOC, I was finding the 10% room is hard, right? In that particular environment, as I understand it, at least. If you find yourself in the 90% room of the exploit, then our best chance is to say, well, look, we get why you do a licensing business. You are an event management and a sporting and governing body. You create the product and other people come to get a slice of it and pay for the license fee. It's a genius business model which allows all of the risk to be managed, and it's lasted for a very long time, okay? In this room, what Trace does is it allows you to increase the surface area that you can sell to sponsors, right? That's why we've built it the way we've built it. It's just a bit more fragile to do it that way, because you'd rather have somebody in the 10% explore room say, we want to grow the value of our IP by knowing our fan and bringing them into our ecosystem first and foremost, and we want to invest in that.
And
Let's
Tarek,
go.
is there a limit on what you can do and what you can't?
Yes, of course. What we can't do is at least so far, we are not a communication channel which gives an organization reach, right? So what we do is we create a reason by giving the fan something which represents their participation in the culture of the sport. It's like the last mile, right? It's the last mile of, if I give you this, you come and connect. What we don't do is the other 99 miles, right? Those miles have already been trodden, right? There is a product, there is reach, there's distribution for watching the sport, there's social media, there's content creators, covering stuff from all sorts of angles. That passive consumption of that content to become an active engagement, that's the part that we do. But you don't come to Trace because you're like, I need to reach another 10 million bona fide Formula One fans, at least not yet. Of course, in the flywheel of our business model, as we grow, it becomes that, right? Because people who hold an identity which which is representing their commitment to one or multiple sports, then it's an audience also, not just an identity. However, at the beginning, what you come to us for is from going from passive to active, from unknown to known, right? We cannot give you reach, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that we can't yet do is we cannot analyze your entire 360 behavior around all of your participation in social media, all of your payments and all of this kind of stuff. We're just creating the connection first, right? i.e., which sports are you into? Which events have you engaged in? How many of these things have you collected? Who in this network are you connected with? Where are you? Demographic, etc., which is already, by the way, way more information than most sports rights holders even sometimes can ingest, right? And then act upon. So we're starting with the most important connection, which is unknown to known. And we're doing the last mile of that piece. That's what we focus on.
Yeah. And on that, Tarek, how can the industry, the sports industry, rethink its relationship with the global fan?
That question can be paraphrased as, how does a traditional licensing business become a direct-to-consumer business? And that, as I'm saying before, I think it's really hard. I think it's a hard transformation to go through. If you really want to understand if the core product is the sport, right? The rules of the sport, the format of the sport, the event management, production, and getting and distribution of all of that content, that's the core product. On the global fan base side of things, being able to create a direct to consumer proposition for those fans now means a little bit like rethinking the intermediated distribution of the products, mostly through broadcast deals, to doing things, for example, like, and you've seen it already happening in the last decade or so, is having OTT digital subscriptions for content which is exclusively created by the team or the rights holder or the governing body, right? To subscription programs which are unlocking specific perks and rewards, which is often linked to ticketing access. This digital collectibles piece would be part of that direct-to-fan proposition. Merchandise, another massive one, right? It's commercializing through merchandise. The collectibles piece fits within that direct-to-fan proposition, but rights holders are on a massively different spectrum in that journey. Some quite advanced, like I think if you take a look at, say, for example, City Football Group, probably on the more advanced side. NBA in the US, more on the advanced side for sure. And some are at the very, very beginning of that spectrum and still getting the basics in place on a licensing model, which makes it, for us, interesting to try and figure out, who we think is really ready to be able to do that stuff. But there is widespread recognition that long-term IP value growth is going to come from a direct connection with that consumer, because it's not possible to rely on the golden goose of broadcast rights forever when the way that sport is consumed is now fragmenting across all of these digital platforms. There must be something that is unique to the team, the league, the athlete, which only they can offer, and use that to actually wield the cultural capital of that fan base. And in order to do that, you need to know who they are, right, and have them come join you.
From a market standpoint, beside of ATP, the work you did in the past with Formula One and motorsports in general, are you focusing right now on, let's say, EU or EU/the US, or what's the plan?
So I'd say, look, that geographically, we're not really putting filters at the moment. The filters are, we just talked about cricket, for example, right? If you really want to crack cricket, you're going to be addressing an Indian audience. There's no two ways about it. If you're going to be cracking combat sports, you're going to spend time in the US and Asia more than in Europe. There's no question about it. The filters that we put on are mostly to do with the things I discussed before, like where is there a sport where there's an underserved audience, which is globally dislocated from the location of the events themselves, and where is there hunger to be able to actually explore these new models. So we put those filters on, and then we follow the center of gravity globally in our explorations. So we are looking at a variety of different sports verticals at the moment. In Europe, obviously, Europe is the heartland of football, soccer, for your American audiences, obviously. And football, I think, is something that we'll probably take our time about, if I'm really honest. It's a very different sport. It's in terms of how fans behave, what they are into and what they're skeptical of.
It's more
how they
complex,
are
you mean?
served. I don't know if it's more complex. I think you need to tune your entire proposition around football in order to crack football. And I think especially in Europe, and especially in the UK, within Europe, there's I think a fairly deep skepticism of the new when it comes to the business of the sport, right? So if it feels like there's an experience which is really more about the business of the sport than is really about the sport, it's a very, very cynical reception that you can be met with. I say that with a lot of respect, because I think that I think football fans in the UK and Europe have probably feel like they've been milked for quite a few decades now, as the business of football has kind of really come far more into the foreground than it was 20 years ago. And I think to be authentic to the football fan requires a real care and attention. And I also think that they're probably more served with experiences than some of those other sports, which is why, although the prize there may seem like the most obvious and big one, especially with like the World Cup coming up.
Yeah.
I think because of our dedication to authenticity and obsession, I think we can do more quickly in other sporting verticals than in football. But you can, famous last words, right? Like we really, as a startup, you follow the opportunity.
Yeah.
And to come back to your question, geography is not the filter that we put on it.
If I have to pick as example Tour de France, the cycling event, which is by default is the number one when it comes to viewership and fan base, do you see Trace getting involved in this kind of sport?
Yeah. If you know someone, you give them my number. I mean, the Tour de France, actually, we looked at the Tour de France as well about 18 months ago as an ideal candidate, because there is a very core, a diehard core of cycling fans who were, the Tour de France is the way that I don't think there are many events where you see the eyes of fans light up the Tour de France, right? The America's Cup is kind of another one, on the sailing side, which is
it's very niche. The America's Cup is extremely niche, and it's very complex to understand. Therefore, it's almost impossible when you talk about boosting the fan base or the audience. It's impossible because it's complicated to understand. Although today, with all the technology, the 3D virtual
look
animation.
at SailGP. I mean, what SailGP is doing for the I think for the consumption of the sport with the data overlays and the ability to storytell with the amount of data that they're capturing off those ships is it's insane.
Yes.
But like we can debate about where the ripest territory is, but like both of those share something in common to me.
Yes,
right?
indeed. But from purely, I mean, when it comes to technology, it's on the same level like Formula One car racing. There is no discussion in that. But here we're talking about fans, supporters, diehard individuals. Like you said earlier, sailing. It's number one when you look at it, because sailing suffer from, it's like maybe golf or some other sports like equestrian sports and things like that, suffer from this perception of it's an elitist sport. It's reserved for a certain category, and it has very exclusive followers or fan base. It's not an accessible sport. It's not a popular sport. It's elitist. That's what it is. But when you talk Tour de France, cycling, when I talk about Tour de France for being a French product or French brand with massive history, whoever I talk to from all the 5 continents, everyone follows Tour de France,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is crazy.
It's one of the most viewed sporting events, full stop.
Absolutely.
And the stats are insane. It's a bit like stumbling for me upon cricket in the same fashion, in that you know, the what's beneath the surface, if you're not a fan of it, is massive. And I think the Tour de France, given that it has this ritual format, and it's an occasion which is split into stages and days and this kind of stuff, there is a very natural structure of storytelling across the event, which Collectibles can certainly enhance and highlight, and, you know, add the media value to that experience. So I think about it as, honestly, I think it's a fantastic candidate for us. Honestly, we'd love to do that. Would love to, and I know our creative director, who is a bit more into cycling than I am, has got some special thoughts and ideas for the Tour de France.
Yeah, good luck. I wish you all the best with the Tour de France. Can you explain again to our audience what does it mean when you say 99% of fans will never attend a live event?
Yeah. Well, just to sort of clarify, 99% of fans who are watching an event are not at the event, right? It's not that they will never go to an event, right? It's just that actually, if you look at the percentage of consumption of the sport, the vast majority of it is happening away from the stadium or the arena, right? So, for example, you know, I haven't missed a Formula One race in 7 years, right? That means what? I've probably watched around 120 races or so. I've been to one, right? I've been to one. So that I'm probably slightly less than 1% of my consumption is in real life. And that's not to mention all of the hours of content that I'm consuming around the live event as well. So if you measure it in hours, it's even less. So that's what I mean by the 99%. 99% of sports is consumed by people who are not at the event.
At the event, yeah.
Yeah, but there's an opportunity there, right? So there'll be some people who organize their lives around going to live sport, right? And they are a subset of the 1%, really. High value fans, season ticket holders, people who will spend on location, you know, buy the jersey every year, etc. They are, you know, think of the Pareto, because my engineering background coming in now, but the Pareto curve, right? Of, you know, the top 1% probably account for 50% of revenue or thereabouts, right? It's the next 15% of fans who are super fans, right? Obsessed. Never miss a moment. Talk about it. You know, wear the jersey, have a fantasy team, right? Or whatever it is. Those ones, but who don't come to the events, right? And who remain unknown. There's money in their pockets ready to be spent, and there's obsession ready to be fed, right? And the medium to do that, this direct-to-fan proposition, is still something that's being worked on, right? Not just in sport, by the way, but also in music. It's a big topic in music around how to unlock the value of the superfan. The rest of the 99%, honestly, are most likely casual followers who are just watching what's going on, and maybe some of them you can bring down the rabbit hole of obsession if you do it in the right way. But it's really that 15, maybe 20% of fans who are unknown, where there is, you know, they're at the top of the rabbit hole of obsession now, and you want to bring them further down. So maybe they'll consider coming, you know, organizing their holiday around the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix or whatever it is, right? And the way to build that kind of consideration is to recognize them, to know them, and to bring them into the ecosystem, so that level of consideration for purchase is that much higher. Because, hey, if I actually go to this thing, I have an identity. It's like having a loyalty card, right? I go because, like, I already know that I feel that little bit more recognized, and I feel that little bit more special because I'm not an outsider here. All of my commitment is recognized when I turn up. That's the kind of virtuous circle that we want to create, because although most of them never will, for a rights holder, take for example, is like one of the tennis tournaments in the US, has been saying, look, we think it's cool that we can address the global fan base, but if there are ways that we can bring more of that global fan base to our tournament that gets bums in seats, even better. That's what we, this is back to being in the 99% and that 90% room of people who are exploiting their core business. Hey, can you help me sell more tickets and more bums on seats? We can do things with people with their proven fandom identity if they turn up. That actually even gave us the idea to say, well, you don't just have to monetize them when they're sitting them on the couch at home. Like, yeah, let's create that suction which actually brings people closer and closer to coming to a live event. But in order to do that, you got to meet them where they are, which right now is, on the couch, on the mobile phone, checking the scores while they're taking their daughter to swimming, whatever it is, right? And that's the part that we play.
Yeah. Let's talk about two sports that you know very well and worked with. When it comes to building engagement, what differences about, let's say, Formula One versus tennis?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there are some. And they're not always that easy to reconcile, if I'm honest, right? Which is a scalability challenge for us, of course. Just look at the format of the sport, right? Formula One, 24 races a season, spread out between March and December, and they're either 1 or 2 weeks apart, right? There's a little bit of a nuance in format. Sometimes there's the sprint format, which is a slightly different format from the regular weekend. But ostensibly, you have a race every 1 or 2 weeks across 9 months, right? And the way that we have so far set up that POC was just there's a collectible for the race, right? One race weekend is the event, effectively, right? Tennis is different, right? So there are 4 Grand Slams, and there are 9 Masters 1000s events, and there is the ATP finals.
Yeah.
So there are 14 major men's tennis events and women's tennis events. I think women's tennis is the same number of events, if I'm not mistaken, across the season. And then you have the 500s and you have the 250s. All of these are ranked events, and players have to sort of play in a certain number of them every year, and their points that they amass at each of these, a Masters 1000 means there's 1,000 points up for grabs. That affects the rankings. And then within a tournament, there are the brackets, right? There's all of the qualifiers and then the brackets, which come down to, the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and the finals. There are several tennis matches a day, right? Even from the quarterfinals to the finals, there are 7 matches within 3 days, right? Yeah. And if you put women's and men's together, that's 14, right? So the structure of the event is that the drama happens in a match, and it happens in the tournament, and it happens across the season. Yeah. So to create, to cover a tournament so far, we've been doing, 14, 15 collectibles plus one for the whole tournament, relative to Formula One, where we do one for a race weekend, right? Which is a little bit higher fidelity because, we're concentrating more effort there. Very different. And the way that data as well we can use it in the storytelling is different for it to mean something. So there's a different creative challenge there. Like you can see in the background there, actually distantly, one of the examples of a Formula One race from Las Vegas, which kind of you can't really see it super well from here, but it looks sort of like an alien seashell type thing built from the racetrack. With tennis, we've done a couple of different things, using the court as a canvas with some momentum data, and then we've done things more with like player name, image, and likeness as well, much more pop art style things. Different things resonate with different fans, and so, but the biggest challenge is the format of the sport itself and the rhythm of it, right? And how you capture the rhythm and the ritual of it. The Tour de France, I think it's like 30 days, back to back,
it's
right?
1 month.
Pretty much. And that's it for the rest of the year. Yeah. So once again, that would be a different format and a different challenge. But, at the end of the day, the mechanics underneath, the things that make it similar are greater than the things that make them different, right? it's ritual one way or another. There's drama one way or another. There's data one way or another. And the way that we fuse that together into something which captures that ritual into something which is an artifact of identity, that's the similarity. And, I think there's the commonality there exceeds the differences.
Nice. How does fan engagement look like in 2030?
In 2030? Well, I mean, that's about 5 years away.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think that certainly the macro kind of movement that I would see is that fan engagement is going to look more like play.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking this because if we go backwards five years ago, or even post-pandemic, this kind of discussion, this kind of topic was like kind of science fiction. And we've seen things shifted full throttle. And this is why I'm curious to...
Yeah. I mean, look, there's a few things back to the innovator mindset here. Like this is how I look at this kind of question, which is we will tend to overestimate what will happen in the next 2 years and we'll tend to underestimate what will happen in the next 5 years. So there'll be things, and you've seen it happen with like metaverse and virtual worlds and VR, and like we'll just be doing super immersive experiences and we can now have fans in the stadium from wherever they are. I think the hype curve, there's a technology hype curve, which is like a well-established kind of phenomenon of there's hype, there's big disappointment, and eventually the technology sort of comes and levels out where it's at. And I think on a lot of these immersive things, we're probably in the, trying to figure out where that end level is, which is why, Trace, by the way, it's immersive to an extent, but it's actually really very, very simple. And the reason we designed it that way is because the capital intensity around a lot more of these immersive technologies like VR and XR and all the rest of it, I think are not games that we're going to win, right? So I would say that the immersive side of things will have probably stepped on a little bit, but I think it will be more to do with, on average, fandom looking more like play, right? Play is taking over the world. Fans are being made in video games, right? Like they pick their teams based on, like what FIFA team they were playing, and as a kid. For me, I have an F1 sim rig right downstairs. I just moved house and I'm trying to figure out if I can still keep it, right? But I mean, for me, that was a big connector between watching Drive to Survive and obsessing about every race. Was like, I played the game. I know every corner, right? I know every track. I know every corner, right? Like, so when I'm watching, I have a different appreciation for what's going on the field. So this direction of play, making a consumer experience sticky, means having choices, having consequences, having drama, having community, like multiplayer experiences. The core product of the sport will be wrapped in play. Being a fan is the game, right? That's what I think we will move towards. I think the role of content creators will be far more industrialized than it is today as well. I think sport owes so much to YouTube and the content creators on Twitch and YouTube. And I think the role of those in building IP value will be more connected than it is today, for sure. As an example, I'm a huge F1 fan, but I'm also a fan of Matt and Tommy's P1 podcast. Like, my tribe within the bigger tribe, I think, will also be something which is more visible and more connected. At the end of the day, that's part of the entertainment matrix. And I also think that, like, you can't deny that sports betting has been on the rise as well. It's a back to choices and consequences and play. The distance that you travel between a gamified engagement experience and a sports betting experience, those lines get blurrier and blurrier. We are not a sports betting application by any stretch of the imagination. Choices and consequences are not sort of financialized in our thing, but I can't help but imagine that sports betting will continue to eat up some of that attention as well. So Long answer to a short question, but being a fan is the game. It's going to look more like play. The exact modality of that play, there will be a plethora of them. And I think the rights holders that play some good bets now will see the benefit of that within that time frame.
You're listening to the Pre-Zero Sports Talk. For more conversations on sports leadership, faith, performance, and innovation from Sweden to the world, visit prezerosportstalk.com. Great. Now it's time for our lightning round. Ready for speedy Q&A?
I'm ready.
Let's do this. Favorite sports moment of all time?
My favorite one, I think Lando Norris's first win in Miami is my favorite one. And yeah, I don't need to elaborate. This is a lightning round.
I think on that, I fully agree with you. Yes, that was awesome. And on that, what's your prediction for F1 2025 season?
Well, I think my prediction
tough between.
I think my heart says that I want Lando to come back and win it, and I'm gonna just stay with that. Right, my head and my heart don't say the same thing, but you got to choose which one to listen to. This is a moment where the heart rules.
Let's see. What's your perfect Sunday look like?
It looks like pancakes in the morning with my family. It looks like the F1 race, most likely, sometime in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I live up in the Lake District in the UK, so I like to spend time out in the hills, swimming in the lakes. And maybe one of my other obsessions is painting Warhammers. These little Warhammer figures. This kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So
Wow.
this is very relaxing for me, very relaxing, and that's my perfect Sunday.
Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Night owl.
Okay. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Coffee. Tarek,
Another obsession, incidentally.
Yeah.
Another obsession. I grind it, I weigh it out, I pour just the right amount of water. I manage the dosage of caffeine very carefully. That's a rabbit hole.
Yes. Yeah. It's sounds familiar. I know what you mean. Yeah. Is it hard to find the right coffee beans?
No, it's not. It's not hard to find the right coffee beans. I think there are loads of places you can do mail order coffee for great coffee. And then even with good coffee, it's a lot more about how you prepare it than it is about, in my view, you can have a really nice cup of coffee with beans from the supermarket. You just got to prepare it in the right way, and you'll get the best from the bean. That's my view.
Do you like medium roast beans or?
Yes, medium roast.
Sorry for our audience.
This is the theme, right? Obsession is the theme, right? We got sport, we got technology, we got Warhammer, we got coffee, we got heavy metal, so all that stuff.
Yeah.
Just live in the rabbit hole is the most satisfying place to be. Yeah. So no apology needed, Sid.
Yeah, I have a say. When you get the virus, there is no antidote. Doesn't matter if it's sport or you're a fan of a team or an athlete or a coffee like we're talking about. Yeah.
100%.
I'm a coffee lover. And sometimes I need to hold myself. Yeah, fantastic. If you could have a dinner with a historical figure, who would it be and why?
Historical figure, so somebody who's no longer alive.
Yeah.
Man, I have an answer for this one for people who are alive, but
yeah, go ahead. You can pick two.
So I think so I've got so here are the two people that I would love to have dinner with individually. The first one is Toto Wolff, the CEO and team principal of Mercedes AMG Petronas Formula One team. Interesting. I think from a strategic leadership, financial leadership, and operational leadership perspective, he's a role model for me, and somehow still seems to be just a really good human who has just really sound values. And so I would love to learn a lot from that guy. The second actually is a woman called Esther Perel, who is a couples therapist. And the books that she's written and talks that she's done on the nature of relationships have been massively inspiring for me, because she's a woman that speaks like 5 languages fluently, and I think more languages as well. And what it enables her to do is to find a precision in language, in dealing with issues which all of us face in all of our relationships, that unlocks new ways of seeing things. That newness of insight is absolutely just awe-inspiring, and I would definitely urge people to go listen to her. If you're in a relationship of any kind, go and listen to Esther Perel. So those are the 2 historical figures. I don't really know. I don't spend too much time thinking about the history, but more about like what I can learn from people who are in the spaces that I'm in for today forwards.
Nice. And lastly, a piece of advice or wisdom to our listeners on any topic.
Don't give up. I mean, it's so cliche, but like, resilience is honestly, and I'm talking about this in the context of not just being a startup founder, but whether it's corporate innovation and feeling like you can't get things done as quickly as you want, whether it's a career change where you're not quite sure what to do with, whether it is whether it's a relationship that like you have to be patient with, or a child that doesn't want to listen. Like, just be patient with yourself, and don't quit from fatigue. Sometimes the right thing to do is quit. Sometimes the right things to do is change them up. But like, the wisdom is knowing the difference about why to do that. And it's sometimes it's a question of spirit, and I just don't get defeated, I think is the one thing.
Tareq Nazlawy, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sid. It's been a real pleasure. We covered a lot of ground, and I can't wait to listen to it back. We can talk about coffee later.
We will. And for our listeners, I leave you with this quote from Muhammad Ali. He once said, "Service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth." We want to thank you for joining our show. If you enjoyed this episode, we have more for you. You can now watch the entire episode on our YouTube and Spotify channels. While you're here, subscribe and don't forget to tap the bell. Visit prezerosportstalk.com to explore more conversations on sports, leadership, faith, performance, and innovation. From Sweden to the world. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and make a difference. We'll see you soon. Take care.